computer, feel free to turn off your camera and just let your name sit there, top there. I did my best on that anyway. So, all right. So Kelly, did you hit record?
I think Carl's doing that, Carl.
Carl did it. Okay, just making sure, because that's the kind of thing that I would forget. So today we are going to talk about brain basics, and I'm sure this is something that a lot of you guys are familiar with to some extent or another. I'm trying to fuss with my own computer screen so I know where to look and all of that. But Brain Basics is just a way for us to think about how we can help our kiddos learn about how their brain works, how we can better understand how our own brain works as adults, as well as maybe give some information to parents or other people that we serve at this time to kind of normalize and recognize the stresses that we're all feeling right now. So this information has been super helpful for me in the past month. I have been home with my daughter, socially distancing since March 11th, I believe. She had a tonsillectomy, and so we got to jump on spring break, and then we have just been here ever since. And that's been a lot of fun, except for when it's not. And when it's not fun, it's really not fun. And I have to do a lot of reminding myself that we are all experiencing collective trauma right now. We're all experiencing stress and overwhelm, and that our brains are shooting back and forth trying to find a place that feels comfortable. So this is just knowledge that I think really is beneficial for right now, but in additionally all the time. Brain Basics is something that I worked to create over the past year with a group that I serve in Indiana. So I work with the resilience team here at ESSDACK in Kansas, and I also help with a grant fund that is running in Indiana called Positive School Discipline Institute of Indiana. And this is a curriculum that we have put together for teachers to use with students. And we're looking at the teacher side of it today, which is similar as what the high school students see if you were using this for a high school group of kiddos. But we're just going to walk through the 6 parts of our brain and kind of what's going on in them, and then talk about strategies that we can use for calming those down. We'll probably practice a couple of those strategies as we go. Let me see. First day with a clicker. So the first level of our brain downstairs is you've probably heard the terms upstairs brain and downstairs brain. And so we're going to kind of dig in and talk about what parts of the brain are active in there, and what do we do, and how do we upregulate or downregulate those areas of the brain. Excuse me. So we have the survival brain. Okay, so we have that highlighted here with our brain stem. We've got a little lizard there. That's going to be our key memory piece for the survival brain is a lizard. And then the second piece, we have our relationship brain. So this is in that limbic system. And we have a few different things that we're going to recognize there. We got an elephant, we've got a fire alarm, we've got some balancing hot and cold. And then we have some different emojis there with a little guy and different faces that he's feeling. And then we have our thriving brain. And our thriving brain is going to be this top front center part of our brain. It's the prefrontal cortex. And this is called our thinking brain, our thriving brain. This is where we are able to make cognitive decisions and really process things logically. So I don't know about y'all, but right now I'm spending a whole lot more time in my relationship brain and my survival brain than I am in my thriving brain. So we're going to go a little deeper into these 6 parts here. Okay, I'm gonna scroll just so I can get to the bottom of the chat, just see if it's, yes, okay, there we go. So the first part we're going to think about is the cingulate. And so this is our self-regulation center. And this is where we can really kind of identify, like, is mad, sad, glad, and afraid. And right now, to me, that is one of the best check-ins we can be doing with people, is really just digging in. Mad, sad, glad, or afraid, where are you at right now? And when we can identify that, we can get deeper. But sometimes in this process, we can't identify if we're mad, sad, glad, or afraid. I had a conversation yesterday with my husband. He came home and something was said, and I just, okay, hold on, just pause. Mad, sad, glad, or afraid, where are you at right now? And he's like, I just don't know, right? He could not really label where he's at. That's happening in our self-regulation center. A second piece that we have too many buttons going on, is our awareness center, that insula center. So this is an awareness spot in our brain. This is what helps us ground us and keep us in reality, know where we're at in the world. It's what keeps us balanced. I like to think of it as hot and cold. Our little icon here is kind of an equality thing. That's what we normally use this icon for. I just think of it as a balance, balancing, being able to know where your body is at in the world right now. The third one we have here is the prefrontal cortex, and that's our thinking center. That's the one that we are probably most familiar with. And then we've got that elephant in our hippocampus, and that's our memory center. We're going to go deeper into each one of these, so trust me. And yes, I saw somebody said PowerPoint, emailed. Absolutely. We'll make sure those are available to you afterwards. Then we have our amygdala, which is our fear center. And then we have our brainstem, which is our survival center. And all of these parts of the brain work together when we're talking about regulation, dysregulation, upregulating, and downregulating the brain. So we're going to go into each one a little bit deeper. So the first one we're going to look at here is the amygdala. So I like to think of the amygdala as the brain's smoke detector, and it's going to let you know if there's a reason to be scared about something. And what we need to understand is in people who are experiencing trauma, this area is likely going to be exaggerated. So basically, it's as if you walk into let's say you walk outside and you see a cat, okay? And you've had, you're not sure, is that a cat or is it a tiger? Like, is that a cat or a tiger? And your brain is like trying to fire off right at the moment to decide what is it that you see. And you might think, oh my gosh, that's a scary, huge bobcat and it's going to get me. And I've had a bad experience before, and your brain's going to fire all these things all at once. And it's going to send you into a spot where you could run away. Or it's going to be like, oh, look at that little kitty. We have a kitty cat lives on our porch and he has 3 legs and he's just the most adorable thing. Oh, how cute. Come here, little baby, right? So it's just that spot that sends the alarms to us that help us know if we're safe or not. Right now, we have a lot of people whose amygdalas are turned on high alert, and everything is scary. This part of our brain is overreactive. It is signaling a threat and an alarm, and our bodies aren't quite sure if it's a real threat or not, and it's just taking over. The next one we have is the hippocampus, which is our brain's memory bank. And so it's going to put a timestamp on all your memories and store them in the right spot. I explain this to kids like the movie Inside Out. If you've seen that movie Inside Out, Riley has all these different characters in her brain, and they store her memories and they code them as joy, fear, sadness, disgust, and anger, right? So they're coding those memories, putting a timestamp on them, and then she can call back those happy, positive, joyful memories when she needs to. Of course, if you've seen the movie, you also know that sadness takes over at one point, and we realize that we have to have the sad memories too. And that's a lot of what resilience is. So resilience is knowing that the sadness and the anger and the disgust and the fear come in, and that not everything in life is joy and peace and love and wonderfulness, but that those memories help us when we are struggling. And we can say, you know, we've been through tough times before. I don't know about you. I've never lived through a worldwide pandemic. Like, that's just not something I've experienced so far in life. But I have had struggles. I have had tough times. I have had times that I can pull out of that memory bank in my brain and say, you know what? My community, my family, the world made it through this. We can do that too. I think a parallel there right now is maybe I remember in Hutchinson, I remember a couple of tough years we had where our town literally blew up. Any other Hutch people in here? Our town literally blew up when I was a senior in high school from gas explosions. And then the very next September, as we're recovering from that, was 9/11. Right. And so I remember my community at that time and the stress that it put on us here. And so now I can recall, how did our community come together during those times? But for people who've experienced collective trauma, long-term trauma, this part of the brain might be underreactive. Those areas in the brain, their memories might not be in the same place, or they get categorized in a way that causes fear or stress when there isn't fear or stress to feel. So then we have our prefrontal cortex, and that is our brain's thinking center. It's where we can concentrate and make decisions. Now, again, for people who've experienced trauma, this part of the brain might be underreactive. It might be hard to make decisions or be aware of where you're at in the world and how to really manage this time specifically. And this is going to be really, really challenging for anybody under the age of 25. I don't know if you have kids under the age of 25 or humans under the age of 25 in your house right now, but this part of their brain is not fully developed yet. And that's huge. So I want you to think about, when you've had those moments, either in classroom or parenting or just in the wide world in general, and you look at someone and they've done something that just seems absolutely inappropriate, out of line, illogical, and you say, "What in the world were you thinking?" And what is their typical response in those moments? I don't know. I don't know. And that's true, right? Like that is literally what was happening in their brain at that part up here. Nothing was happening, just reaction. And I'm seeing this with a lot right now. A lot of my friends and family members is they're having a hard time accessing that logical thinking center of their brain. And it's just not turned on. It's underactive. The cingulate is our brain's regulator, okay? And so it's also going to be underactive in people who've experienced trauma, and it's gonna have impact on our ability to handle conflict, notice mistakes, regulating emotions. So our days might feel a lot like this, going up and down in our feelings. We're mad one minute, we're glad another. We're sad, and then we're afraid, and we're just flowing through these. That's normal and okay to be at right now. Our cingulate, though, we want to be able to make sure that we can notice when it is dysregulated and how can we help ourselves get back online. And then our last one here is the brainstem, which is our messenger center. And it's primary focus is just to control our basic body functions, to controlling our breathing, our heart rate, the way we swallow, whether we're awake or sleepy. And this part of our brain, if we've experienced trauma, might be overactive. You might be noticing at this time you are more tired than normal, or you have this pent up energy that you're not quite sure what to do with. And what your brain is doing is it's keeping you alive, right? This part of our brain is what keeps us alive. It does not have the ability to think logically or process information. It just controls our basic functions, and it will take over to keep us alive when we find a moment of fight, or freeze. That's its job. A lot of people in trauma experiences start to live in the back of their brain and are looking for ways to just survive. And there's no logical thinking happening. But that doesn't have to be the way that it is. So we can take a few different approaches for brain change. And so what we're going to do here is I'm actually going to see if I can escape out of here so I can see where this is going. Perfect. Sorry about that. We are going to, we're going to talk about a couple of different things to do, and then I'm going to toss you into a breakout room just to kind of talk about what are you seeing with bottom-up approaches in your own areas right now. So Kelly, just a heads up, we're going to do that here in a few minutes. So what we want to do with bottom-up approaches to brain change. Bottom-up approaches means that we recognize that people are back here and they're not thinking logically, so we can't come at them with a whole bunch of words. So instead, we want to work through body senses in order to change that limbic system. Our goal is to deactivate that amygdala and strengthen and regulate that insula to be able to find that balance there. And so we use strategies such as breathing exercises or muscle tension and relaxation, mindfulness and grounding are really big activities here. We always want to start a co-regulation process with bottom-up strategies. So think about a time that you have been in a heightened state, and maybe take it to a classroom in an argument at home or somewhere where you've been in a heightened state and someone tells you to calm down. What is your body's reaction in that moment? because I know mine is probably the exact opposite of calming down. And so that's an example of how our brain can't process that calm down piece. And so it just keeps firing instead. So we want to start with bottom up strategies to re-anchor people into the world that they're in right now. Recently at work, we have a young woman who works for us who it was from one of our learning centers, and she is on our staff now, and she is an amazing human. And she also lives a pretty tough life these days. And she came into work just very upset and needed somewhere to go, needed somewhere to be. And I was the only staff member there at the moment that really had a connection with her on a personal level. And so I went in and sat down with her. She was sitting in the back of a room on the floor and was crying and hyperventilating to the point that I had to bring her a trash can so that she could throw up. She had just worked up a lot of dysregulation in her body. And when I first sat down next to her, my first goal was simply to deactivate her amygdala, to help her know that right now she was in a safe place. She was in a safe room with a safe person. And so all we did was breathe, but I never said a word to her about breathing. I simply sat down with her on the floor and just started to exaggerate my own deep breathing breaths. Because of the mirror neurons that we have, her body will naturally try to sync up with mine. And so I sat on the floor and I did that for probably a good 10 minutes until I could start to feel her tension start to go down, right? And then I started doing a few grounding exercises with her. Once her breathing had calmed down, I took her to we were still sitting in the room, but I started to take her to a space that was a little safer for her, to help her realize that she was still in a safe room at that moment. And so I just started asking her, can you find 2 things in the room that you can see? Find 2 things that you can see. Because in her head, she was back in the traumatic space. And so she opened her eyes and she looked around for a moment and she named 2 objects in the room. And then I just let her breathe for a few minutes. And I said, can you smell anything? Can you tell me a couple of things that you can smell? Now, if you know anything about our office, it smells like cookies. And so she said, I can smell the cookie plate over on the table. Okay. And we let her breathe. And then, can you find a couple of things you can feel? And she started rubbing her hands on the carpet and talked about the roughness of the carpet. Now, can you feel something else that feels different? And she reached out and started rubbing the back of her jacket, which was soft. I'm just anchoring her back into the room. We've done no work yet to get her out of whatever was causing the stress up here, the thinking part. We haven't gone that far. Just re-anchoring to deactivate that amygdala. Once we've deactivated that amygdala, what we're doing is we're reducing that whole stress response in the system. We're decreasing hypervigilance. Right there, she felt unsafe everywhere. And it's reducing the reactivity that she has towards those trauma triggers. So she's able to just start to move and realize, access that hippocampus and realize this is a safe place where I'm at right now. I'm in this room, I'm here, and I'm safe. Now, what's going to happen there is once we've done that, once we have an overactive insula and we've reduced it, once we have that, we've reduced the disassociation and numbing of the brain, we start to have a better sense of awareness for ourselves and others. We start to experience fewer emotional outbursts and fewer dissociative symptoms. And so what we're doing is all we're doing here is trying to anchor people to realize that they're safe, the brain is okay, the fear is not happening in this space right now, and we can take steps to anchor back to where we are. So we call them all bottom-up approaches, and we want to activate this space first when we're working with someone who's dysregulated. So I'm going to have Kelly break you out into some breakout rooms. And Kelly, I'm not sure, you're going to have to look at participants and decide how many people, probably
there. We have 100
3 or 4.
people. So
okay. And
you want 3 or 4 per room?
Yeah, let's do 3 or 4 per room. And what I want you to talk about in your room is I want you to talk about how are you seeing right now dysregulation happening with people that you are currently social distancing with or that you see on social media? What are the needs you're seeing, and which parts of the brain do you see activated the most in those moments? Are you seeing more fear, or are you seeing really a lot of survival? Just kind of what are you noticing about the way people's brains are responding to this collective trauma we're experiencing today? So Kelly's going to throw into a breakout room. It should pop up here. Kelly, let's give them about, what time is it? Oh, we have like a couple minutes. We're going to give them, do we? Is that right? This is so hard in this fast of a time.
We started about 4 or 5 minutes late.
Okay,
so
let's give them, can we do 3 minutes in there?
Yes, and I'll tell you if.
All right, we're going to talk just about a couple of strategies for regulation here, and then we're going to pull back into the main room. We think we've got a little bit cut short. So what I would love for you to think about and try to do during this time for yourself is start to put some of this into play. Start to take some time to think and recognize when it's not your thinking brain, it's not your thriving brain that's firing, it's that survival brain that's firing instead. And if we can start to just be aware, we can usually begin to shift ourselves into that relationship brain and up into our thriving brain again. But it takes a lot of awareness to do this. And so one of the easiest ways that I have found for this to work for myself and for my family is to identify your freezing and your boiling points. And this is something that right now I think is vital for so many of us, that freezing and boiling points, both of them are spaces of dysregulation. So your freezing point is the point where you become so relaxed that it's actually stressing you out and you begin to dissociate and numb. Or your boiling point, we're more aware of those. Our boiling point is also when we begin to feel out of control and so overwhelmed by stress, we're not able to manage our stress response system. And so kind of identifying where are those two places at for you. I've noticed them a lot in myself over the past week. Like I said, I've been home for 30 days, which if you know me, you know that's not normal. I've been home for 30 days, and the first 15 were kind of fun. Like the first 15 kind of felt like a vacation. And then it got real fast. And I've noticed that my freezing point is anytime my husband is watching old sports on TV right now. And so he's watching a game that happened 20 years ago, and I am not interested. And I tend to just sit on my phone, and then I will maybe mindlessly scroll Facebook, or I start playing a game. And then all of a sudden I think I'm relaxed, and I can't be relaxed. There's something going on. I need to find something to do. I need to go clean something. I like that relaxation point, letting my body get there. I start thinking about things and I begin to panic then. And so for me, really limiting social media has been a big deal right now because that becomes a freezing point for me. My boiling point is anytime I try to teach my daughter. I'll just be real. I'm a teacher. I should know how to do this. And yet, for some reason, teaching your own children is not as smooth as teaching a class of 32 strangers. And it puts me to that boiling point faster than anything. The triggers that I had in a classroom that I could normally let go, I cannot let go when it's my daughter giving me back that sass or whatever it is that she's doing. And I hit that boiling point. And yesterday I realized it, and I just got up, and I can't see, I'm in my beautiful office right now, but that door right there is my laundry room. And I got up and I went and just sat in the back corner of it and hid for like 15 minutes because I was at a spot where I could not manage my stress response. And I knew if I said one more word to my daughter, it would have ruined the rest of the day. And so I'm really trying to be aware of those freezing points and boiling points right now. And as you become more aware of them, figuring out how you step back and take a minute to breathe through it, reground yourself, anchor yourself within what you can see, hear, feel, smell, taste, that right now you're safe, your brain is okay, and things will be all right. And if we can start practicing that, we can start modeling it for other people that we serve and help.
So Katie, that's a great way to segue into a question by Deb here that says, when it's just one person in the home, they can regulate pretty well. But what happens when in the family dynamic, everybody is dysregulated at the same time?
Yeah. I really love a strategy that Brene Brown uses here. She has an amazing podcast that she just started in March. If you want to go back and binge that, it is an amazing podcast. Kelly, I don't know if you can find a link to it and drop it for people. But what she talks about is when you come into the space, like you're going to get ready for a family time, family meal, sometime where you all have to be in the same room together, and acknowledge what percent you're at right now. So my husband comes home from work. He's had a full day. He's an essential employee. We could talk about how I don't think that's true, but he's an essential employee. He goes to work all day. He's busy. He comes home, and I'm expecting him to be ready to go and take over parenting. And he's expecting me, because I've been home all day and I'm not really working anymore, to be ready to continue parenting. So he comes home and he says, hey, I'm at 50% right now. And I say, that's great. I'm at 50% too. We're good. We can 50. I got your back. You got mine. But there might be days where we say, you know what? I'm at 20. We tried this virtual conference thing today. I'm exhausted because it was great, but we had 500 people and you got to be on and big and la, la, la. And I'm tired. I'm at 20, 30%. And he says, you know what? I'm at 20 or 32. And so we say, we're going to go to our own separate spaces for a little bit, recharge our batteries, and then come back together. For some families, that might be, hey, we're going to sit down and we're going to watch a movie. You find something to do that recharges, but allow yourself to announce where you're at and then give grace there. And I think alone space is a huge thing here too.
What was the name of that? You thought the name of that podcast?
Brene Brown. It's Brene Brown's newest podcast. I don't know if we can Google it and drop it in. I don't know the title of it. I can't get it into my phone. But it just launched. It's a good one. When we were little, we were never sent to our rooms. We were never spanked. We were never disciplined really in any kind of way normally. My parents were super hippies, and they told us to go to our rooms to renew our spirits. And for me, that has always been a really kind way to say, right now, you need to take a moment to process and think. And we can do that with people, or we can give people permission to step away and do that on their own. So alone time to recharge is another thing that's really important right now for a lot of people. So just recognize dysregulation in the family unit is going to happen. And figure out how you can acknowledge that, validate it, normalize the feelings. We would call it clarify and affirm, right? If we're inspired leadership fans, and then come back together when we've had a few moments. I will drop PowerPoints in here, and it has a whole bank of regulation strategies. So we will make sure you guys get all of those. And it's a great bunch of things that you can do, from breathing strategies, grounding strategies, and reflection strategies that you can begin using with your families and other people in your community at this time. So I think we really have got to ditch out of this session here. Let me see if I can escape and kind of give you I don't think I can escape. What's going on? Google Chrome, where'd you go? Let's fast forward. So Ruth, thank you for being in this room today. And I feel like this was a crash course, and I got through like this much of the information I wanted to. So if you want more information, please take a snap of this picture here. You'll see it a ton of times, but you can connect with us in a lot of different ways. And then we're going to throw you back into the main room. If you want to follow that link you see there, you should be able to type it in or go back to your email. Is that right, Kelly? Can you help give them some directions here?
You can go back to your email, or if you look in the chat, Carl threw in the HTTPS, is that Conference Central is the link that was in the email that went out today. So you can copy that, paste it in your web browser, and it will take you to there.
Okay, thanks for being in here, and hopefully you'll join us again, or you'll check out one of the other awesome sessions. We'll see you guys soon.